Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Can you see the presentation? The PowerPoint presentation itself. I'm just confirming once again. Can you see my screen?
I can see.
Not yet. Nothing. I can't see nothing.
I figured. Let me just fix that again. Perfect. So let me start by thanking everyone for showing up for this session today. It's day 3 of 100 days of hacking. I'm very excited so far for what we've been able to achieve, what we've been able to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And I'm very thankful once again because you've been able to show dedication so far. You've been able to follow through. And for those who have not been able to join us during our live sessions, I know you've compensated through the videos that we uploaded on our YouTube channel. So let me first take this opportunity to ask that please subscribe to our YouTube channel so that whenever we make any updates, or rather when we upload any new video, you'll be in a position to get a notification in good time. Because I realize that sometimes when you make when you publish a video, you may have to make an announcement to everyone that a video has gone live. And I think some people may miss out on the announcement, so it's easier if you get a notification. So I'm kindly requesting that for these particular sessions, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, then you'll be able to get all the information in good time. Then, well, after 100 days of hacking, if you'll still be interested in following a channel, that will be up to you. But for this, I'm kindly requesting that you do so. Secondly, like to mention that we'll be holding a session on Saturday, that is tomorrow. It will be a very interesting session with one of our experts. So I hope you'll be able to join, considering the fact that it's a weekend. And that's why we came up with a poll to find out if we had a day, we set out a day on a weekend like Saturday, if you will be able to join. And the majority of you, apparently around 93% were able to confirm their availability. And that's very encouraging. And for those who have been reaching out to me via DM or on Twitter or any other platform, trying to find out how you can join, I was able to make a pinned tweet on my Twitter profile containing all the necessary links. You have the link to the Discord, you have the link to our YouTube channel, and then we have a link to these particular meetings. So you don't have to keep on looking everywhere to try and find what link you need. So just find the links on my pinned tweet. Then again, emphasis on the fact that we'll be holding another session tomorrow. So we look forward to seeing all of you present, or whoever will be able to make it. And today we are going to talk about introduction to web application security. But before we get to that, I would like us to, I gave out an assignment last time, day one of introduction to ethical hacking, and I raised three important questions, which I hope we're going to go through them very fast. And also for those of you who are able to respond, apparently 34 of you were able to respond, and that's quite good and encouraging. We're able to also give very valid responses. And remember that some of these assignments are not here to test how knowledgeable you are. They are basically here to help, or rather make you go an extra mile to when you're not having classes. You can do your own research, find out more information about a particular topic. Because just as we mentioned when we started off, we may not and we will not cover everything within the 100 days of hacking, everything to do with cybersecurity. Because I also remember that during the introduction, we never even talked about some of the career fields within cybersecurity. And there are so many. So because of time, we have to rush. And sometimes these assignments are meant to make you be a bit more adventurous. And one thing I normally say is that to be successful in cybersecurity, one, you need passion. Because there's so much information out there that consuming it at any given moment can be overwhelming. So if you're not passionate about it, trust me, at some point you will feel so overwhelmed. Then the second thing is you have to be very curious. Curious in the sense that you want to know exactly what happens when this, when I do something, I would like to know what is happening. So a curious mind is also very important. Then thirdly, one thing that I normally find very important is self-discipline. Self-discipline in the sense that if you've not covered or understood a particular topic, reach out to either the instructor or they'll have so many resources online nowadays. For example, if you want to read about cryptography, maybe there's a concept that you never understood when the instructor was leading a particular session. If you cannot reach out to the instructor, you can go ahead and Google. And that's a very, very important skill that I would like to emphasize on. Then one thing that I also failed to mention when we were doing the introduction to ethical hacking is note taking. I don't know if many of you take notes, or you are assuming that the fact that we are making these recordings, you believe that there's no point of writing notes. One mistake that I personally made when I got into cybersecurity was I never used to write notes, especially when I was coming up with my exploits or solving particular challenges. These notes are very important because once you've done a particular, let's say, I'll give an example of a lab on Try Hack Me. Once you've done a lab on Try Hack Me, why don't you try write it down, how step by step, how are you able to solve it, so that at the end of it all, you have a record somewhere that you can refer to whenever you come across a certain or a similar scenario. That's important. So don't take note taking for granted. If you can write notes, please do. I normally recommend Notion.se. Notion.se is a service that offers you ability to write notes online, and you can access them anywhere. We have Gist by GitHub, also a very good platform that you can use for writing notes. So we'll keep on giving you this kind of tips and tricks as we proceed. And yeah, back to the assignment. So one of the questions that I posed was the difference between vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. I would like to pose this question to some of us who are here. If anyone is willing to respond to this question, what is the difference between vulnerability assessment and a penetration test? If we can do this very quickly, I'll be very happy. Also, the mode of operation is still the same. You have something to say, just raise up your hand, then I'll let you speak. Anyone willing to give us a try on the difference between vulnerability assessment and penetration testing? Anyone? Believe you have some very good minds in here. And you already did the assignment, so it will be relatively easier to solve this.
Yes, hello.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes. From what I found out from the research, vulnerability assessment is to find out weaknesses in the system, while a penetration test is to find out how far you can exploit those weaknesses.
That's very good and pretty much straight to the point. Vulnerability assessment is basically looking at the security posture of the particular application or system that you're trying to, let me use audit, because once you either scan, mostly it's scanning, you're scanning through the system, then you list the vulnerabilities and maybe potential impact as well. But the action stops at that. But with the penetration testing, you find those particular vulnerabilities, then you exploit them. You just don't list or present them. You find them, then you exploit them. So that's the biggest difference between a vulnerability assessment and a penetration test. So when you come across these terms, don't use them interchangeably, and that's a mistake that many people tend to do. So we may want to, let's say, this is actually something happened to someone a couple of years back. During the scope, apparently the company that hired them had requested for a vulnerability assessment, because the company itself did not understand what a vulnerability assessment was. So when they were hiring them, they hired them for vulnerability assessment, hoping that they're going to deliver penetration test. So once these guys wrote their report and told them that this was our findings from the assessment, the organization was actually very angry with them, telling them, but this is not what we asked for. We wanted you guys to try and hack our system and see how best you can exploit the vulnerabilities that you found. So let me call it ignorance in communication, whereby you're not able to differentiate these terms, will lead you into some kind of trouble. So it's important that you understand this kind of term. So if you're writing your scope, you and the organization that you're going to do a penetration or vulnerability assessment with, make sure the terms are very clear. Don't do a penetration test when you've been asked to do a vulnerability assessment. I hope that is clear. Then the second question was the difference between authentication and authorization. Quickly, anyone willing to help us with that? What is the difference between authentication and authorization? You can use an example to make so that it makes a bit more sense. Anyone?
I can give it a try. So
yes, please.
Authentication is just verifying the claimed identity. So for example, if you're working at a place, then the security person will check your badge and check whether the face that is there is the person who wants to enter the building. Authentication is what you're permitted to do on a system. So for example, which areas can you access using your badge.
Okay, you've actually defined them interchangeably. You've defined authentication for authorization, but it's good that you've actually put that one in. You've made the distinction. This is the reason why I normally say that it's good to actually understand some of these terms, because when you're writing your report, don't say that you're able to exploit authentication. Let's say we are able to do an authentication bypass, when in actual sense you meant you're able to bypass certain authorization restrictions. So just as Walter has said, although the other way around is authorization, basically, or let me start with authentication so that it makes a bit more sense, it flows better. Authentication is what he has defined as you check your ID, the name on your ID and your face to make sure that indeed you're the person you claim to be. So we are authenticating you. And again, sorry for this, never define a term using the term itself. So for me, saying authenticating again to define authentication, that is wrong. So forgive me for that. And let me just give another scenario. So for authentication is when you visit Facebook, for instance, or Twitter, they ask you for your username and password. So once you provide the valid credentials, you are allowed to log in. And that's authentication. You've been authenticated into the system. Authorization, on the other hand, is according to Walter, was we have different levels, access levels in which you as a user, you're able to gain access to. For instance, let me just go back to Facebook for example. For Facebook has a section for let me use pages. Has you as a normal user, you have there's a page administrator, and there's you as a fan of that particular page. So for access control or authorization means that if I'm the admin of a particular page, then I have access rights to being an admin, so that not any other person, not a fan of that particular page, can claim to have access to the admin back end. Another similar example regarding Facebook is Facebook has an admin back end, and we also have a user front. Let me call it front end. Then when you're logging into Facebook, you're not logging into the back end, the admin back end. You're logging into your personal platform, call it a dashboard. Then there's someone with elevated privileges who can access Facebook as an administrator. So authorization basically checks to see that you're able to access where you're supposed to access. If you are not an admin, if you're not an admin, then you'll not be able to access admin features. That's basically the difference between authentication and authorization. I hope that one is clear. Then lastly, the difference between data exfiltration and data infiltration. This is very easy. Anyone willing to give it a try? Very fast, if you can, please. Anyway, let's, Ian.
Yes, data exfiltration is to copy out restricted files from a system to an external system, while data infiltration is copying files from an external system into an internal system.
Thank you very much, Ian. And that's very important, because when you're talking about breaches happen in different ways, in which, for example, you come across guys saying that, let's say Facebook, most recently we had issues to do with LinkedIn, where there was data had been scrapped off LinkedIn. So with exfiltration and infiltration, it simply means that with exfiltration, data is being removed from the system to the external world. But with infiltration, you're introducing new data from the outside world into that particular system. Let me give you another practical example using SQL injection, for example. We're going to get to SQL injection sometime next week when we are delving deep into web application security. So with an SQL injection, you're able to, let's say you have an initial foothold on that particular system. So with the SQL injection, you can either do a database dump. And what I mean with a database dump is you can copy the whole database and keep it in your own local machine. So that, or if you're interested with that, just let's say someone like, let's say you have a user, Michael, whom you would like to get their information from a particular database. So from SQL injection, we're able to pick out information specific to Michael and save it whatever on your local machine that you wanted to save it. But with infiltration, on the other hand, data infiltration is you've gotten access to a database, you have the initial foothold, then as opposed to removing data, you add data. For instance, there was a case of this person who was able to hack into a medical facilities system. Then he was able to include his name into the payroll. So he used to receive a salary every month because his name was now appearing in the data in their database. So infiltration means adding new information to that particular system. I hope that one is clear. So those are the questions that I posed during day one of Introduction to Ethical Hacking. And so today we're going to deal with active recon on our website. And for some reason, I don't think I'll be able to show, but let me see. I'll proceed and see how far we can push this. Because as I explained when I started, my laptop has messed me up, but I hope to make do with whatever I have. So with websites, today per se, we're not going to do so much in the sense that I was hoping that we only take 1 hour today in today's session. Then there's a lab I'm developing. I should be done with it within the next couple of hours. I'll share the link once I am done, so that that's part of your assignment. You've been asking for some kind of practical lessons. So these will be a practical lesson on conducting active recon on a target. And this information will be very useful next week when we dive deep into the different attack surfaces and vectors available in web applications. So I'll be very fast, and please bear with me. So with active recon, I remember during our last session, I told you that we have two types of recon. We have passive recon and active recon. So with passive recon, basically, I told you that you do not directly interact with the target. But with active recon, actually what Michael was doing on day 2 was passive recon, because you're not interacting with the target. I know when you're trying to gather information about Safaricom, for instance, making use of WHOIS, unfortunately, we were not able to show you how to maybe utilize Shodan, but I believe it will be shown in good time. So basically, you're gathering information about Safaricom or any other target that you have without directly interacting with them. That was passive recon. For today, we're doing active recon now, where you're basically interacting with the target itself. So active recon, just as I've defined it, the attacker engages directly with the target. And even within active recon, we have 2 types of active recon. We have manual active recon, and also we have automated active recon. So for manual and automated active recon. So with manual recon, we have several things that we look at. And these are things that you yourself, not a tool or a script, is going to do it for you. We encourage you to make sure that you get your hands dirty in this particular scenario. So we have a source code review. Source code review is basically looking at a target's source. Let me see if I can do that. So we have Google here. So source code review, basically, you've heard of those instances where a guy says that they were able to, actually it was something very humorous a couple of weeks ago, where there was a claim that someone was able to hack another person using F12. I know some of you have come across that joke of F12, where you click F12, then it loads up some interesting console down here or on the side. But we're not going to deal with F12 for now. We're going to deal with, on Google Chrome, we use Control-U to view the source code. So these are the source code for Google. I know if you do not know how to read code, this becomes a bit tricky. Let's find a better, simpler target. Let's see. You now see why the reason why Google docking that was introduced to you last week by Michael is important. This is very, very important because it helps you narrow down your targets. So this is a global children forum. Okay, you can go with this. So this basically what I was trying to look for here is I was looking for a website that hosts WordPress. And index of basically means that I'm able to see the content of the particular, I'm able to enumerate the content of a particular folder. Then wconfig means, simply as was explained to you the other day, we're using the in title, is the title contains the words wconfig. And WordPress has this wconfig. We're not interested in this, sorry. I apologize for displaying that so that we don't get sued for that. Let me just disappear from here, because you may come across some information that we don't want. Actually, I can see some information that we do not need, and it's very dangerous. So let's view the source. This basically, you're viewing the source here. You're not able to see this HTML, doc type HTML. These are the head section, which includes very important information, meta information. The title goes here. The style sheets, you have some that also have JavaScript. Yes, you have JavaScript here. So the reason why we normally look at source, viewing the source, is when some developers come up with when they're developing some of these websites, they make a mistake. For instance, they know that there's a login page on a particular website, and because they don't want to keep on remembering what the password is, they leave that information as a comment within that source code, so that it becomes visible when you're viewing the source code. So one most important thing that you normally do when, especially as when you're starting to conduct a penetration test or a vulnerability assessment on a particular web application target, is you view the source so that you're able to see what kind of information is publicly visible. And also, one thing I like to point out is that if you're into bug bounty, and you come across some credentials that work, not just any credential, because I know with bug bounty, they insist on impact on a particular system. You may find sensitive data exposure, let's say a username and a password of a particular user or the developer of the website. But when you try to log in, it does not work. So when you submit that as a report in a bug bounty program, it will be rejected because there's no impact. But for some, they leave a username or an email and a password. Very important and sensitive information. You try logging in and you're able to log into the system. So with that, you're able to get some bug bounty rewards for that. So don't take viewing source code for granted. So we look at this, so you're able to see the poise of the particular target itself. You can see this is for me, I normally identify WordPress, normally use WP content or WP plugins, and they have such folders. So it becomes easier to know that, to now narrow down when you're going to the scanning phase. You remember we talked about the first stage being reconnaissance. Then once you have enough information from the recon stage, you move on to scanning. So what we now know that this is a WordPress site. So being a WordPress site, we know you can do either manual, try to exploit it manually, or we can use automated scanning through a script called WP scan, which I think we'll cover next week when we're dealing with automated type of recon, active recon. So we look at this information. This basically, again, this source code review, just trying to see if there's any sensitive information that you can gather from this particular site. From here, you can see this site is optimized with the Yoast plugin, version 17.6. So you can just look at, come to Google, for instance, then see latest version. Latest version of Yoast, CSEO. So the latest version, according to this, is 17.1, and the one that is listed here is 17.6. Does it make sense? Let's go to, let's look at this, see if we can get the actual parent. Let's see. Okay, the latest version is 17.9. And the version that is running on this site is version 17.6. So there must be something that made them upgrade from 17.6 to 17.9. So you take note of this, you write it somewhere, because this is a very important finding that you come across. You've identified that there's a plugin called Yoast SEO. It's running version 17.6, but the latest version of Yoast is 17.9. So that means you may try and see if there's any vulnerabilities associated with Yoast SEO version 17.6. Let's see if we can do this just now. Although, okay, let me just do it, then disappear from this immediately. Vulnerabilities, let's see if there's any that has been reported. None has been reported, none has been reported. Okay, so just take note of that, then you may revisit later on when you have enough time to see, to comb through what made them upgrade from 17.6 to 17.9. So we have SEO plugin here. Then what else? We have some meta tags, other meta tags. Basically, this is WordPress. Then something else you need to do is try to see if you can view the contents of any particular directory. So let's try and this. We have WP includes. Try this. Copy that. Try to see if you'll be able to view the content of WP includes. Well, let me disappear from this. In short, this website is not very friendly. Let me get away from here. So guys, what I was doing is just showing you an example. Please don't pursue that. What I was doing, don't do that for now, unless you have permission. That's why I've stopped doing that, because trust me, you may come across information that you don't want to play around with. So basically, that was an example of active. To start from, sorry, manual, that is source code review. Then we have robots.txt. So basically robots.txt is a file that is normally included in the root folder of any web application that tends to tell the different search engines. We have Google bots, you have Yahoo, Bing, I think, so that it guides them on where they can look for content. Okay, mostly it does indexing and following. So there are certain areas on your website where you do not want Google to index, so that when someone goes and Googles, let's say your website, cyberspace.co.ke, then it pops up as an index, the admin backend has been indexed by Google. That becomes very dangerous, because if already Google has indexed your admin backend, that means it's our admin, the area in which you can log into your admin backend. Then it makes the work easier for an attacker to be able to compromise or try and compromise your system. So a robots.txt file is aimed at telling these certain robots that you can index this particular folder or this particular link, but you cannot index this other link and things like that. Let me see if we can do that again here. Let's see if we can get a robots.txt file. So let me see how. This Mozilla talking about robots.txt. Let's try in URL here. We can try what? Let's see this. You can see this crops.org robots.txt. Okay, yeah, so for this crops.org has a robots.txt file. And when you look at this particular file, basically tells us this file is to prevent the crawling and indexing of certain parts of your site. Oh, basically these days we're able to just copy this content from a different entity and post it here. Let me see if we can get that. Let's do that. See. Okay. Okay. Oh, interesting. So you have the British Council also has a similar robots.txt file with the same content. Okay. Anyway, that's why you say Recon is important. So we may develop another target if you are Black Hat. But now let's proceed with what we were doing here. So here we're looking at this is specific to Baidu Spider. So with the robots file, you can specify different instructions for a different bot, either Google, Yahoo, or whatever. You can specify different instructions. So with the robots.txt file, you normally have the user agent. User agent, basically this refers to that type of bot that is trying to access the system. So for this user agent, this is SEMrush bot. So for the SEMrush bot is not allowed, you see, disallow. So if it's not allowed to visit the search page, it's not allowed to visit the search for this page. I mean, these pages technically, they are prohibited to the SEMrush bot. And as someone who is curious, you will try to ask yourself, why have they been disallowed? Is there some kind of maybe sensitive information through that? So as a curious mind, you may try to do that. Let me just see if there's anything of interest. Yeah, that particular folder modules. Oh, the page you basically, yeah, as I suspected, this was just copied from somewhere else and pushed here because some of these things do not make sense at all. Then there's this very interesting information here. Look at the files. We have changelog. Changelog can give you the version of the particular, if they're running a content management system. We have the cron job file here. You can try and trigger cron job and see if it outputs any information. Then we have, wow. No, I'm also going to disappear from this side. Sorry, I'm going to leave that side again. So, okay, as you can see, there's so many websites that are actually very vulnerable out here, and it becomes dangerous, especially when script kiddies come across such kind of information, because they can easily deface a website like that. Sorry, I did not, it was not my intention to show you some of these websites. I'm just picking them randomly, and I'm coming across some information that I personally don't like. So basically for the robots.txt file, it will show you what areas of the site are allowed to bots and what are not allowed to bots. And similarly, they give you a hint on what the developer or the company or the organization does not want you to see. So if you're able to access those modules, I mean, not modules, those hidden folders or those hidden files, or trigger certain files that are prohibited from being indexed, you may find something of interest and something very fun, or something interesting for you to do or pursue further when you're doing a penetration test or a vulnerability assessment. For instance, what we've been able to see, especially for the site that we're able to see the content of their folder, that is sensitive data exposure, especially when there's information that should not be exposed. So when you're writing your report, you just take a screenshot of that particular page, then post it in your report. Tell them we're able to see these files from your website. Then that makes part of your report. Then we have the sitemap.xml, similar to robots.txt, but it's not really similar, because sitemap basically tries to tell the sites that the search engines that try to crawl your website. They tell them that you can these particular links or these particular websites are associated with us. You can follow them and see where they lead you, or you cannot follow them. Or maybe they have, we have a very big website with so many and thousands and thousands of pages. And since you cannot have a menu link for 1,000 options, maybe you just have a sitemap, which tells you maybe there's a certain page somewhere which is hidden from view, but you can access it through that you can access it directly via a specific link. And one thing about the sitemap XML is that it gives us information about a general information about how your organization is poised. For instance, if I may give an example of Safaricom, if you are perhaps to get a sitemap file of Safaricom, it may tell you, or it may show you some of the subdomains that are linked with Safaricom. It may also give you some of the services that are linked with the Safaricom, which are not, of course, publicly exposed out there. So XML file is also very important. It's an important file that you need to look at when you're doing your recon. I hope you're not going to come across something that you should not see. Okay, let's see if there's anything of interest here. Right maps, how to find the sitemap, her. Okay. This one looks interesting. Let's see. Okay, yeah, we have something else very interesting here. Again, we've come across sitemap have the sitemap.xml here. So let's try and see what it has. So this, but the XML, this is extensive markup language. It's a markup language. Many people tell us that, or tend to argue that some markup language, a markup is not a programming language. For example, HTML. HTML is a markup language. So this is a markup language, which specifies, tells us that this sitemap is version 0.9. It was last modified on 2015. Then this link gives us the link to colby.edu sitemap. So we can also enumerate. Okay, so we can just go back and see this Colby sitemaps here, which perhaps has more information. And I can see from it has a lot of, so these are basically links that are associated with Colby. And you have Colby, assuming in fact they are trying to lag my computer now. The links I'm not going to enumerate all this. Let me just cancel. So as you can see, we have so many links that can have been exposed through the sitemap XML. So if you're doing a penetration test and you're within scope, you can try and see how many other sites or pages have been exposed to that sitemap, the XML file, so that you can further pursue or whatever it is that you want to do on that particular site. Then again, as I mentioned when I started, make sure that you write notes. Take screenshots of whatever data you find, whether it's important or not important. It will be useful when you're writing your report. Then you have the browser-based debugger or console. This is what I was talking to you about when you're doing F12. Let's load up this colby.edu. When you hit F12, you'll have this something appear at the bottom or on the side, depending on where you prefer it happening. For me, I prefer putting it at the bottom. So from here, I can see the elements. And let me just mention this very quick. Many times you've seen on Twitter, someone, a screenshot of someone, maybe it was a genuine tweet, but the content of the tweet was changed and something was inputted. Let me just give you an example of what is done. For example, on this site, you see the title here is a new study contributes to further understanding hippocampus role in memory. So what I can do is, because I want to, let's say, spread some false news, I can come here and say, just change this, say cure for COVID-19 found. COVID-19 found. So that when I refresh this changes to cure for COVID-19 found. So, sorry, it does actually refresh the page again because I've clicked the link. Sorry about that. Let me just do it once again very fast. Cure for COVID found. So when I can come to this website, then take a screenshot of this website, claiming, then go on whatever I'll go to spread my my fake news saying that this site claims that they have found, or the colby.edu, I think it's a learning institution, or it's an institution of higher learning. They have claimed that they have created cure for COVID-19, or they have found cure for COVID-19. So this is how disinformation and misinformation is often spread, because you've not been hacked. By the way, you've not been hacked. They've just accessed this debugging section of the browser and changed content on your website, then took a screenshot, and now they claim that maybe you're the ones who did that. So that is one thing that I wanted to point out very fast. So moving on, you have the console. This console is important because sometimes a website may be running some plugins, especially JavaScript plugins that may be outdated. So when you load a particular website, you see that there are so many errors here. So those errors, and I normally say errors tell us so much about a particular website and how it was built, how it was designed, and also its functionality and how it works. So for example, here I see there's a migrate is installed version what? So there's a developer who forgot to remove this from their code. Maybe they were testing, and these are console log showing that well, the website is running up until that point. We have an array here. I don't know what the array is for. So you see, this particular developer, for instance, forgot when they were doing their debugging, maybe or testing, they might have forgotten to delete some information from their source code, and that information is now running. Sorry, that information is now running on their particular website. And that's why it's important to have a DevSecOps security as a part of the development process, because I'm sure some of these things may not be visible. Let's go to Facebook and see if we can see that. Because I know Facebook is very interesting when it comes to security, because it's often the target for so many people. But let's see if normally Facebook has a warning. Good, yeah, here it is. Facebook normally has a warning. It tells you stop. This is a browser feature intended for developers. If someone told you can copy and paste something here to enable a Facebook feature or hack someone's account, it's a scam and will give them access to your Facebook account. So basically, this is what is mostly encouraged for developers. If you have developers amongst us, make sure that you're able to use this particular feature to communicate with your users, because they may fall victim to some kind of ploy by a malicious person. For instance, let me just go back to this and try trigger something. Let me try and trigger something here. Exactly. So as just as Facebook has mentioned here, Facebook someone account, it's a scam and will give you access to your Facebook account. Someone might ask you to access this particular section of our website, then maybe type something in the console, for example, alert 1. Then let's become a bit more creative and say alert, you have been hacked. Then running, I already have this one running. So it pops up here saying you've been hacked. So they may tell you to also run some specific code here that, like for example, stealing the one that is going to steal your cookie and maybe forward the cookie to them so that they can clone your session and everything, things of the sort. So these are some of the things that make for example, when you're writing a report, you can also take a screenshot of this and tell them that you need to find a way in which you inform your users that they should be very careful with the console as console part of their browser, just as the way Facebook has done. Then talking about console, have sources. No, that's not. This is interesting, but for later on. Something else I wanted us to talk about is this, the network aspect here. The good thing about the network area here, it tends to tell us, let me pull this down, tells us, let me pull this on now. It can tell us exactly what is running on that particular website. For example, when you load this colby.edu, what are the resources that are being called? Of course, you have HTML, when you have, let's say all here, we have CSS, we have JavaScript, which is basic, as you can see here. You have the favicon, you have all these, but you can filter through this with the XCR so that you can see what requests are being made. So for example, you can see there's a request to this collectively. Try to see that, you see it's a request, it's a post request, for example, which was when you're trying to load up the website, there was a post request that was sent to Google, this Google Analytics. So they have Google Analytics integrated. And basically, you can use this. This is very important. Personally, I normally use it because it tends to tell me what requests or services are being called when I load a particular website. And I also like to mention this. For guys, developers with poor coding standards, what they normally do is, for example, when you're doing password reset, they normally pass the URL, your email, for example, as part of a parameter in a post or get. We'll get to post and get HTTP request and later on, maybe sometime next week, when we are now trying to familiarize ourselves with how our web application works. So they may, for example, you're trying to change your password. So they have that field where you input your email, then you click submit. So once you do that, some individuals with poor coding standards, they pass the URL and the user ID through a post parameter or a get parameter that can be easily intercepted from this either using Babsuit is a proxy, or even just manually here, you'll see it as a request being sent somewhere. So you can simply intercept that request or stop it, change the email address, then get the password reset code. And through that, you're able to take over that user's account. And I believe you've come across stories, not let me call them stories, because these things happen. You've come across news items where you see individuals are able to change someone else's password. They're able to intercept, let's say, an OTP or two-factor authentication. Also, by the way, two-factor authentication can also be intercepted through this if it is poorly integrated onto that particular platform. Because maybe this, when you're trying to log in, it sends a request with that specific code via HTTP, which you're able to intercept. So you know that, let's say, if it is an SMS, you're able to see the code that was being sent out. You just input it without even having the phone here. Some of these things, when you get to an advanced level of web application security or web application hacking, you'll be able to try them out and see how they work. So again, emphasis is on this section where you'll be able to see what requests are being sent or received. Similarly, we have headers here. These headers tell us a lot also about what that particular website is trying to communicate out there. And some websites use headers to pass very sensitive information. You've heard of IDOR, Insecure Direct Object Reference, where let's say your user ID, and which gives me an idea. As part of your assignment, I think I'll incorporate that. You'll have to exploit some kind of IDOR by exploiting either headers or cookies. I'll see how I'm going to do it so that you'll also get your hands-on experience on how that is exploited. So these are what we call headers. Headers are like access, allow, credentials, true, and all that. Sometimes some websites have specific what do you call them? Headers, which pass very specific values. So what happens when you play with those specific values? For example, if let's say X content ID, user ID is 1, what happens if you change it to 2? Does it load a different page and all that? So that's how IDOR is often exploited. That is through the headers. And I'm just rushing through the header section because there's so much information in headers that you can use to manipulate a particular website. So you look at the headers, see if there's anything that stands out, if there's anything that is unique, something worth looking at, then you can always revisit. Remember, we are only collecting data. At this particular point, we are not trying to hack into that particular website. We are only collecting data. This data is going to be useful when we start now planning on how to proceed. I remember Karim, during our last session, he talked about threat modeling from an attacker's point of view. So this data, when you collect it, it gives you a bird's eye view of how the assets are and how you can model your attack, your approach towards the particular attack. And also remember, when I started off, I told you, that's during day one, I told you that it's important to collect as many or as much information as possible so that when one fails, you can obviously try a different thing to see if it goes through. So here we're just simply collecting data. So these are all about, not all about, but these are about headers. Then something else I want to talk about is the cookies. So for the cookies, these are basically some information that is stored on your browser that is used to identify your particular session on that particular server. So these cookies also can be exploited for, especially during, especially with IDOR. And so as you can see, these values are often encrypted. And I know when you get to encryption, Michael is going to guide us and tell us how to identify different types of encryption and all that so that you can easily encrypt this information. So you may find that this long text here maybe represents the user ID or the session ID of that particular user. So if I can capture it, then maybe tweak it, clone it, or do something else, maybe I may be able to take over that particular user's session. And important to note that the cookies being exposed here does not mean that the website is vulnerable. No, it's just something worth looking at. Sometimes it may be something, sometimes it may not be something. So make sure you collect information. Then you'll sieve through what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. Then let me go back to the presentation. We talked about cookies, we talked about headers, etc. So basically, there's so much else that you can do when you're doing manual web recon. And I said we're only going to take 1 hour. I know I've spoken so much. In fact, I've spoken very fast so that we stay within the 1 hour that I initially set. So having said that, next week, we'll be talking about automated web recon. While we do a deep dive into web application penetration testing, not assessment, but penetration testing. We'll try and identify different weaknesses and try and exploit them. So up until this point, I would like to welcome your input, questions. If any of you has a question, please feel free to mention. Let's do that in the next 5 minutes so that by exactly, it's 6:59 right now. So 7:05, we can end this particular session. Remember, I'll be sharing a lab session. It's in form of an assignment, which I'll request you to find some information for me from that particular web application and input them somewhere. We'll be using CTF room for this particular assignment. I'll give you more information once the lab is up. So guys, quick questions. You have questions, you have additions that you like to make, because I know there's so much I've not said. If you something I've left out and if you believe our audience here, you will be very much interested in finding out, please feel free to do that quickly in 5 minutes. You guys are awfully quiet today. Are you tired? I know it's Friday. So some of you may be already in the weekend kind of mindset. You want to go out and have some fun. Then Jones is here making so much noise, asking you questions. So unless, if you're satisfied, just write a message and tell me that you're satisfied with the session, so that we don't waste so much time also. If you have a question, feel free to ask. If you have a contribution, please feel free to do that. Thank you, John. John is satisfied. We have 4 minutes.
Hello again.
Peter has a question.
Yes, I have two questions actually.
Yes.
Yes. Yesterday you talked about using the search parameters like in URL, in text on Google. Can they also be used on other search engines as well, or is it just Google only?
Okay, actually it's not me who spoke about them. It was Michael, and he's here with us. Michael, if you're in a position to, can you answer that? Michael? But okay, I think he's maybe indisposed at the moment. But what he actually taught me was something called Google docking. With Google docking, that is specific to Google, because those parameters are specific to Google. When you go to Yahoo, when you go to Yahoo, you'll find specific parameters for Yahoo. So don't say that just because this works on, like, the in URL, in title work on Google, maybe they will work on Yahoo or any other search engine. So different search engine have them developed separately or independently. So make sure you do your research concerning whatever search engine you're trying to use. Okay, Google docking is mostly popular because it's used everywhere. And trust me, there's so much information in Google than many other search engines. I hope that answers you, Ian.
Yes, thank you. It does answer me. I had one more request as well.
Yes, please.
I wanted to request if after the session you could maybe send the PowerPoint slides on the Discord.
Okay. Oh yeah, remember I have 2 to send for day 1 and day 2. I'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
Most welcome. If someone else wanted to speak, if you can hear me, please speak. Go ahead.
So, hello, Jones.
Hello, John.
Okay. I wanted to ask if, because some people have dedicated their time to learn some stuff manually, reversing or binary. Will they get like a chance here?
Sorry to interrupt you. I'm not able
Yeah.
to hear you clearly.
Okay, what I mean is that
Yes.
some people have dedicated their time to learn some stuff like maybe some people are choosing to learn crypto or maybe binary. Will they have to follow the schedule like how you are learning the web?
Okay. If I may, if I got you correctly, you're talking about the schedule for the presentations for the 100 days of hacking.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, please do me a favor. Could you just type the question as a comment so that I can answer you adequately? For some reason, I don't know why I was not able
Can
to
I
hear
also
you.
add to that?
I apologize for that.
Can I also add to that?
Yes, please.
So if I understood it correctly, he's asking whether the people who want to pursue a certain field in cybersecurity, they have to follow all our lessons. What we discussed with Jones and the panel, the coordinators, was everybody should be able to, every topic should be discussed and should be presented so that whoever wants to pursue a certain topic can be able to pick up from that. We should give everybody a chance to learn whatever that interests them. It's like a book. Every topic that you're interested in will be in that book. So if you want to pursue that a specific topic further, then you can contact the tutor after the lesson, and then you can engage the tutor further on that particular topic, which will be advisable. So in this case, what we're just doing is we are introducing you guys and we are reintroducing ourselves to cybersecurity. We are covering all topics, and then we are going to have the instructors engage anybody who is interested in pursuing a specific topic at an advanced level, individually and both as a group.
Thank you very much for that clarification, Michael. And I can see John is satisfied with the response. Anyone else with a question, a comment? We are already 1 minute past our deadline. So I'm going to assume that we are satisfied, and thank you once again for joining us for this particular session. I'd like to emphasize and remind you that we'll be having another session tomorrow, and it will be led, I'll let Michael do the introduction for the person who will be leading. Michael, please tell us more about the session tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, Jones. So tomorrow's session will be led by a cybersecurity ninja called Txt Junior. So Txt Junior is a he's a highly skilled cybersecurity offensive professional. He's an cybersecurity offensive expert. He's an expert in offensive cybersecurity, and he has worked for various clients, both locally and internationally. He has developed various concepts. Actually, he's hacking, unlike the way people started cybersecurity by learning things like Metasploit. He started hacking before even Metasploit came about, and his was learning how to hack by learning how to reverse code, understand code, develop exploits for those codes, try to hack systems manually. And I think that is the best guy to discuss offensive security, especially when it comes to computer networks, offensive security. So the lessons will be tomorrow, same link. The time will be posted on John's page, the Discord group, and also in my page. And I advise you also, you guys, to share the link so that anyone who's interested in learning can join in.
Thank you very much, Michael, for that update for us. And personally, I look forward to learning because he's one of the most prolific industry professionals we have. And trust me, there's something new to learn every day. So I hope you guys make a point of we meeting tomorrow for that particular session. Then a disclaimer regarding the session today. you were able to see that some of the websites that you were able to access had some very interesting information. And I will kindly request that don't pursue what we've done here tonight, or rather this today. Don't pursue it. Try to find a different target, most likely on platform like Real Try Hack Me, Hack the Box, and also the lab that I'm setting up. So please, again, don't pursue what you've done today. And that said, I would like to thank you all.
Just to add on something.
Yes.
You'll also, I hope you'll also share with them the the what do you call it, the vulnerable web application module, so that if they want to install it in their own machines and test it, they can also do that.
Yeah, I think that will be fair to do. Well, we can do that during a session next week, because we'll be having at least 2 hours to carry out that. So we can use the first session for setting up labs, then going through some basic vulnerabilities and all that. I think that's a good suggestion, Michael. Thank you. So guys, let me first start by stopping the recording. Let me stop the recording.